Hi, everyone. This is Tina Rhodes at UNO. Thanks for everybody that's logged in already. We'll get started at 2 o'clock. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get started in another minute or two. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Tina Rhodes, and I'm a Transplant Community Administrator in the Policy and Community Relations Department at UNOS. I'm joined in the room here today with additional UNOS staff that will help me address any questions that you might have. During today's webinar, we will review the OPTN policymaking process with a focus on the step we are currently on, public comment. We'll also talk about how you can participate in public comment and how feedback is taken into consideration when developing a final proposal for the board. Regional meetings occur during public comment, so we'll also spend a few minutes providing an overview of the meetings and why it's important to prepare before attending. We'll conclude the webinar with a brief overview of the proposals on the regional meeting agenda and provide an opportunity for you to ask questions. First, we'll start by looking at a visual representation of the 10-step policy development process that starts with an idea and takes it through implementation and post-implementation review. In the next few slides, I'll discuss a few key steps. The OPTN has two 6-month policy cycles. You can see that we are currently in the public comment phase of the winter cycle. The Board of Directors will meet in June to review the public comment items discussed and reviewed during the winter cycle. The summer cycle begins in early August with public comment ending in October, and the board meets again in December. OPTN committees meet throughout the year by phone and in person to work on continuing projects and new ideas. How do committees get ideas for projects? They come from everywhere. If you have an idea for a project, we'd love it if you would send it to us at member.questions@unos.org. Once an idea has been identified, the committee begins working through the next several steps, which include analysis, evidence gathering, and an approval process that ensures the work aligns with the goals of the OPTN, as well as the requirements in the National Organ Transplant Act, commonly referred to as NOTA, the OPTN Final Rule, and the OPTN bylaws. Once a project is ready for feedback from the broader community and public, it's released for public comment. During this time, anybody may read and comment on the proposal through the OPTN website. Additionally, the OPTN holds regional in-person meetings across the country. This allows the community to convene, discuss, and comment on proposals. We also actively solicit public comment from stakeholder organizations, both transplant professionals and patient groups, other OPTN committees, and the public. So what happens with public comment? All public comment is published online for transparency and to promote participation. Throughout the public comment cycle, there is ongoing analysis of the feedback submitted, which is shared with the sponsoring committee. Once all feedback has been gathered and public comment closes, the committee will use that information to refine their proposal for the board to evaluate. All of the public comment is summarized and shared with the board of directors to help inform their decision. Feedback is important to the OPTN policy development process. The most beneficial feedback is actionable feedback. The feedback should be in scope and relevant to the goals of the proposal. We want you to be as specific as possible. Tell us why the proposed solution won't work if you think it won't and how it can be improved. Tell us what solutions you suggest and why, and share substantive data and facts that you have to support your solution. Going back to regional meetings, they are held to provide an opportunity to learn about public comment items, ongoing work of the OPTN committees, and other updates from the OPTN. This is also an opportunity for you to provide feedback, hear your colleagues' perspectives, and network. It's important to familiarize yourself with all of the items up for public comment prior to the meeting, and particularly those that are of most interest to you. This allows for more targeted feedback and ensures that you can participate in the discussion fully informed. Representatives of the sponsoring committees will be available to hear feedback and answer any questions that you have. Last cycle, we added breakout sessions to allow more focused discussion and feedback opportunities in smaller groups. This cycle, we will offer abdominal and thoracic breakouts. You can find current information about regional meetings, including agendas and registration information, on the OPTN website. You will find this under the Members tab. There's a screenshot to show you where it is. Here's an outline of a typical regional meeting agenda. There are some regions that have unique schedules, so you should refer to the agenda customized for your meeting and posted on the OPTN website. The day typically begins at 8 a.m. with registration and breakfast. There's then a general session followed by the counselor welcome and update. After hearing that and some other important updates, there will be breakout sessions followed by lunch, and then the regional meetings will convene for the discussion agenda. We usually wrap up around 3 o'clock. Preparing for your regional meeting will empower you to contribute valuable feedback, ask relevant questions, and invite discussion. I know you get a lot of emails, but be on the lookout for regional meeting related emails to help you plan your day. Last public comment cycle, we added a plain language at-a-glance overview to all public comment items. Reviewing these will help you prioritize the items most relevant to you and provide general information about all items out for public comment. Come to the meetings with questions and ideas to improve the proposals. Since not all of the public comment items are presented at regional meetings, I encourage you to join a webinar to hear about the non-discussion agenda items or listen to a recording. In the next couple of slides, I'll show you where this information is located. Lastly, talk to your colleagues to share ideas and perspectives both before the meeting and after. So I mentioned the non-discussion agenda on the last slide. Proposals on the non-discussion agenda are anticipated to be less controversial, have minimal impact on the donation and transplantation community, and/or represent a clerical change to clarify the intent of policy or to remain current with clinical practice. Regions are provided an opportunity to request a proposal on the non-discussion agenda be moved to the discussion agenda. As I mentioned, the non-discussion items will be presented on national webinars. Here's a list of webinars and non-discussion items. The first webinar was yesterday, and a recording of that will be available on the OPTN website. Webinar information and recordings are available where the screenshot shows you here. So it's under the Learn tab on the OPTN website. Next, we'll talk about the items that will be discussed at the regional meetings. I encourage you to attend and participate in the discussion. There will be 2 breakout meetings in each region. The goal is to allow more time for stakeholders to discuss relevant items and have substantial conversations that will provide important insights to members of the sponsoring committees. This feedback will be summarized for the larger group to hear when we reconvene in the main session. Additionally, all feedback from the day is summarized and posted in public comment, so it's available to the community, including members of your region that did not attend the meeting. In response to feedback we received on the last regional meeting survey, we have made some changes to how information will be presented. Less time will be spent walking through the details of the proposal in order to maximize discussion time. This means it's more important than ever that you familiarize yourself ahead of time with public comment items prior to the meeting. The proposals remaining on the discussion agenda may have mixed levels of support, be more substantial in scope, or represent larger changes that impact clinical practice. We have 6 items scheduled for discussion at the regional meetings, and will provide a brief introduction to them today. Additionally, I'll point out some themes you should think about as you review the proposals and formulate questions and feedback. The first one is the National Heart Review Board for Pediatric Candidates. The high level of this proposal is that each active pediatric heart program would be able to appoint 1 primary and 1 alternate representative to serve a 1-year term on a National Heart Review Board. This board would review exception requests for status 1A and status 1B pediatric heart candidates. Requests would be assigned to 9 randomly selected representatives and decisions based on a majority vote within 3 days. In the case of a denial, it could be appealed to the same group of reviewers, and an additional denial could be appealed to a work group member of the thoracic and pediatric committees. Every public comment item includes specific questions for the reader to consider. I encourage you to read this section carefully when you're reviewing these proposals and consider the questions as you formulate your feedback. This information helps the committee make adjustments to their work to incorporate your perspective and experience. For this proposal, you are asked to consider questions about the composition of the review board, how voting should work, and other logistics, including what diagnoses should be addressed, what data is best for effective monitoring, and what other opportunities there are to improve the review board process. The next proposal that we'll look at is the data collection to assess socioeconomic status and access to transplant. This will be presented by the Minority Affairs Committee. Transplant hospital staff under this proposal would be responsible for asking candidates at the time of registration their annual household income and household size. These 2 data points would be entered on the patient's transplant candidate registration form. This data will inform OPTN committees and the community on the impact of a candidate's socioeconomic status. Some of the questions that we'll ask you to consider as you're reviewing this. Are annual household income and household size the best data elements to collect to measure socioeconomic status? What barriers might there be to collecting this data? And should the OPTN have a phase-in time period before these fields become mandatory? The next proposal that we'll look at today is addressing medically urgent candidates in the new kidney allocation policy sponsored by the Kidney Transplantation Committee. This proposal defines a medically urgent candidate as one that's unable to receive dialysis or at high risk for not being able to receive dialysis. This would include a written approval provided by the transplant surgeon and transplant nephrologist. Then the candidate receives priority when a kidney is available within a 250 nautical mile circle, and that the priority varies based on KDPI. This classification is retrospectively reviewed by the OPTN Kidney Transplantation Committee. And as you review this proposal, some of the questions we'd like you to consider are, should any criteria be added or removed from the definition of medical urgency? Do you believe that the medical urgency classification should receive priority outside of the 250 nautical mile circle? If so, should they receive priority before non-medically urgent candidates inside of the circle? We'd also like feedback on the proposed prioritization within each sequence. And what types of supporting documentation do you believe are appropriate to ensure the medically urgent classification is being utilized as intended? The next proposal is related to the distribution of kidneys and pancreata from Alaska. And this was sponsored by the Kidney Transplantation Committee and the Pancreas Transplantation Committee. This proposal would have kidneys and pancreata that are procured in Alaska. They would use the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport as a substitute for the donor hospital as the center of the 250 nautical mile circle for the kidney and pancreas allocation. They would also have the same proximity points as the other kidney allocation. And when you're reviewing this proposal, we'd like you to consider how this would impact the efficient placement of organs. The next proposal that we'll look at today are modifications to release kidney and pancreas allocation. So in cases when an organ isn't translated into the original recipient, the host OPO with this proposal would be able to delegate to the UNOS Organ Center, which is no change from the current policy, or continue allocation according to the original match run, which is also not a change to the current policy. Or they could allocate according to a new match run, and this is where the change is. The new match run would be a 250 nautical mile circle around the transplant program that originally accepted the kidney or pancreas, not the donor hospital, but the accepting transplant hospital. And they also would have proximity points inside and outside of the 250 nautical mile circle. As you review this, we'd like you to consider, should the host OPO retain responsibility? Do you agree with a reallocation circle of 250 nautical mile circle or 250 nautical miles around the transplant program? What are the operational challenges related to having new backup match runs generated that include offers already screened off? In addition to continuing down the original match run or using a new match run around the transplant program that released the organs, does a third option need to be identified? Do you have concerns about cross-matching? Is it appropriate to have the same solution for kidney and pancreas? Next are enhancements to the National Liver Review Board. The proposal includes changes to NLRB policy language, operational guidelines, and guidance documents. For the policy language, it would increase and standardize HCC automatic approvals, clarify reviewer scope, update the threshold for inactive reviewer removal, and add guidance for secondary sclerosing cholangitis and adults with metabolic disease. In reviewing this, some of the questions we'd like you to consider are, for the review board scope, are these the appropriate factors for reviewers to consider for cases where there is no policy or guidance? For removal of inactive reviewers, is the proposed threshold the right threshold for removal? For the guidance, should SSC be treated in the same way as PSC? For adults with metabolic disorders, is the median MELD at transplant -3 an appropriate score for this population? Are other changes helpful and clear? And do you have any other suggestions for improvements to the NLRB? So now that we've reviewed the discussion agenda items, I want to take another opportunity to encourage you to attend your regional meeting. You can find your meeting on the schedule here, and again, information is available on the OPTN website. Whether or not you're able to attend a regional meeting, I strongly urge you to review the available public comment items and include your voice in the public comment process. I'll just pause on this slide for a second so that you can see how to navigate to the public comment page. And public comment is open now, and it will be open through March 24th. And at this time, we'll be happy to answer any questions. To ask a question, click on the hand feature on the right-hand side of your computer screen. We will unmute your phone line and call your name. Please remember to unmute your phone as well, and be sure to enter your audio PIN. You can also submit questions through the chat feature if you'd like, and I don't see any questions in the queue right now, but we'll give it another minute or so if anyone has questions. We'd be happy to answer questions about the regional meetings, the schedule, what to expect during the day, any of the resources that we've listed, or the proposals that we've reviewed.
So we do have a question submitted through the chat feature, and it says, is the OPTN required to respond to every comment submitted?
Yes, I can answer. The team member here, it's Craig Connors. I guess the question is asking, does the OP10 have to respond to every single public comment submitted? And the answer is no. It's really, the comments are submitted to the committees and to the board as they consider the proposals, and it really is at the discretion of the committees and or the board on whether they want to respond to individual comments. They do review every single comment, and that's part of the process, and they do talk about those comments and themes in the comments as part of their deliberation. But no, it's not required, nor typically do the committees respond to every single comment individually. Hopefully that answered the question. If it didn't, please let us know.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Okay, well, if you do have any questions, they can be directed to member.questions@unos.org. And again, they can be about the proposals or about the meeting or resources. We thank you for your time today, and we hope to see you at your regional meeting.